The city was alive with its usual hum of cars, chatter, and hurried footsteps. The sun had just begun to dip behind the tall skyscrapers, casting long shadows across the streets. On one corner, near a quiet alley, a girl sat on a worn piece of cardboard. She wrapped her thin coat tightly around her, shivering in the evening chill. Her eyes, however, held a spark that nothing could dim. Despite the emptiness of her stomach and the roughness of her life on the streets, she carried herself with a quiet dignity. She had been living on these streets for months, though it felt like years. Every day was a struggle to find something to eat, a place to rest, or a kind word from someone. The city was full of people rushing past, their faces lost in their own lives, oblivious to those who had no home to return to at night. She had learned to move quietly, to stay out of the way, to avoid trouble, but tonight felt different. Tonight there was an event happening nearby that promised a glimpse of warmth and plenty. A lavish hotel had opened its grand doors to the city's elite. Inside, the rooms glittered with crystal chandeliers, golden decor, and the soft hum of conversations about deals, luxury, and ambition. Waiters moved gracefully, offering champagne and hors d'oeuvres to the well-dressed guests. The girl watched from a distance, her stomach twisting with hunger and longing. She knew she did not belong here, yet a small part of her hoped for a miracle. Then he appeared. The billionaire. A man whose name carried weight, whose presence commanded attention. He walked through the crowd with a confident stride, his tailored suit sharp and his gaze piercing. People around him whispered, some out of admiration, some out of fear. He had everything money could buy, yet he carried an air of arrogance that made him untouchable in the eyes of the ordinary. He noticed her almost immediately. A small figure huddled near the alley, eyes wide, staring at the world of wealth just beyond her reach. He chuckled, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Look at her," he said to a companion. "She wants something she cannot have. No piano, no food." The words hung in the air, cruel and final. The girl felt her cheeks burn, though she had no shame in her life. Hunger had taught her many lessons, but humiliation was one she had learned to endure quietly. Yet something in his tone sparked a strange feeling inside her. Not fear, not submission, but a small, daring hope. She had a secret. Something that no one on these streets could take away from her. She had once touched the keys of a piano long ago, in a room that smelled of polish and music. The sound had flowed through her fingers as naturally as breathing, filling her heart with a joy that the world could not offer. Even now, when she closed her eyes, she could feel the black and white keys under her fingers, could hear the melodies she had played. It was a world she had lost, yet it lived within her still. The billionaire's eyes narrowed, sensing a flicker of recognition in her expression. Perhaps he saw the spark of defiance, or perhaps it was mere curiosity. He leaned slightly forward, still smiling, with a hint of cruelty. "I said no piano, no food. Do you understand?" Her lips pressed together, forming a thin line. She nodded, not with fear, but with a quiet challenge. She would show him. She would show everyone, not out of spite, but because her talent was hers alone. A gift that could not be ignored. Night fell over the city, and the streets grew colder. The girl wandered slowly, searching for a place to rest, her mind alive with melodies she could barely contain. She hummed softly to herself, letting the music soothe her as she drifted from one alley to another. Even in her hunger and exhaustion, the music reminded her of who she was, who she could be. Meanwhile, inside the hotel, the billionaire moved among his guests, laughing at jokes, inspecting the arrangements, and making decisions that affected millions. Yet he could not shake the image of the girl from his mind. There was something different about her, something that challenged his understanding of the world. For the first time in a long time, he felt a twinge of curiosity that was not rooted in power or control. The next morning, the girl awoke in a sheltered corner, her stomach aching and her body stiff. But the memory of the billionaire's words lingered. No piano, no food. The phrase became a quiet drumbeat in her mind, a reminder that she had to act, that her life could change in a moment if she dared to embrace her gift. She had nothing to lose and perhaps everything to gain. She spent the day moving through the city, gathering scraps and avoiding the attention of people who saw her as invisible. She watched children with their families, couples laughing, and men and women in business suits rushing to meetings. Each sight reminded her of the world that seemed so far away from her reach. yet she knew that music could bridge that distance. By afternoon, she found an abandoned building with a dusty, broken piano. It was far from perfect, keys missing and strings silent in places, but it was enough. She approached it with reverence, brushing off the dust, and sat down. Her fingers hovered over the keys, feeling the familiar weight and texture. She took a deep breath and began to play. The sound was uneven at first, hesitant, but soon it blossomed into a melody that was pure and true. Passers-by paused, drawn by the unexpected music echoing from the building. Word began to spread. People gathered quietly, some dropping coins into a hat, others simply listening in awe. The girl played with all the passion and pain she had stored inside her. Every note told a story of survival, of hope, of dreams that refused to die. The melody seemed to fill the streets, reaching corners where light rarely touched. And then, as if drawn by fate, the billionaire arrived. He had been following a faint sound, a curiosity he could not explain until he saw her, the homeless girl playing a piano that seemed to sing straight from her soul. He stopped, unsure whether to feel anger, awe, or disbelief. His world, built on power and wealth, had no place for a street girl to challenge him with mere music. The girl's eyes met his, steady and unflinching. No words passed between them, only the music that spoke louder than any speech could. Her fingers danced over the keys, transforming the broken instrument into a vessel of beauty. In that moment, the billionaire realized that he was witnessing something extraordinary, something that could not be bought or controlled. For the first time, he felt a crack in his armor of arrogance. The girl, who had been dismissed, mocked, and ignored by the world, held power over him, not through wealth or status, but through talent and courage. He watched, rooted to the spot, as her music told a story that words could never capture. As the final notes lingered in the air, the girl closed her eyes and let the silence wash over her. The crowd around her whispered, moved by what they had witnessed. The billionaire's face was unreadable, a mixture of shock, admiration, and something he had not felt in years: humility. The girl stood slowly, gathering her coat around her. She did not speak, but her gaze met his once more, a silent acknowledgement that the world was about to change for both of them. She walked away, leaving the piano behind, but carrying with her the knowledge that her talent had been seen, had been recognized, and could never be denied again. That night, the city seemed different. The lights shone a little brighter, the streets a little warmer. Somewhere in a grand hotel, a billionaire sat in silence, contemplating a girl who had nothing but music, and in that music, everything. The encounter was over, but the story had only just begun. And for the girl, the road ahead was uncertain, full of challenges and hope. But one thing was certain: she had the power to change her destiny, one note at a time. The next morning, the streets were quiet in comparison to the chaos of the previous day. The homeless girl woke with the dawn, stretching her tired limbs and rubbing her eyes against the harsh sunlight. Her stomach grumbled, reminding her of the constant emptiness she lived with, yet the memory of her performance lingered in her mind. The music she had played still rang in her ears, vibrant and alive, a spark of hope in a world that often seemed determined to snuff it out. She wrapped her coat tightly around herself and began walking through the city, her eyes scanning for scraps of food or a kind gesture from someone who might notice her. She had learned over the months that survival depended on both caution and quick thinking. She moved like a shadow, avoiding the gaze of those who might push her away or look down on her. Every day was a test, a series of obstacles she faced with quiet determination. Yet despite the hunger and the struggle, her mind could not stop thinking about the piano. That moment of creation had reminded her of a life that had almost been forgotten, a life where she felt free and alive. She remembered the first time she had touched the keys, the way the notes had flowed under her fingers, each one carrying emotion, each one telling a story. It had been in a small sunlit room in a music school she had visited once, long before life had turned harsh. That memory was now her anchor, something that reminded her that she was capable of more than mere survival. As she moved through the city, she began to imagine a way to return to the piano, to show the world that her talent was real. It was not just for the billionaire who had mocked her, though he lingered in her thoughts. It was for herself, for the proof that she could rise above the circumstances she had been dealt. Every step she took was fueled by determination and a quiet, burning hope that her life could change. Meanwhile, In the heart of the city, the billionaire could not shake the image of the girl from his mind. He had spent the night thinking about her performance, replaying every note, every movement of her hands. There was a power in her music that he could not control, a force that demanded attention and respect. He found himself intrigued, puzzled, and for the first time in years, genuinely curious about someone who had nothing to offer him in terms of wealth or status. He spent hours in his office, pacing, thinking about how a street girl could hold such power through something as simple as a melody. It was a humbling thought, one that unsettled him deeply. The city outside his window moved on as usual, but inside his mind was consumed by the image of her fingers dancing over the keys, the look of quiet confidence in her eyes. He could not ignore it, and deep down he knew he wanted to see her again. The girl, unaware of the billionaire's thoughts, found her way to a small community center where she had heard of an old unused piano. The building was worn and slightly abandoned, but the instrument inside was intact, waiting for someone to bring it to life. She hesitated at first, unsure if she had the right, if she could really play in a place where no one expected her to, but hunger and determination pushed her forward. She entered the room and approached the piano as if greeting an old friend. Dust covered the keys, but her hands did not falter. She pressed down gently, testing the notes, and then began to play. The music that poured from the piano was different from the day before. It was deeper, more controlled, filled with emotion and longing. She played not for anyone in particular, but for herself, for the chance to reclaim a piece of the world that had been stolen from her. The melodies told a story of struggle, of nights spent in cold alleys, of hope that refused to die, and of dreams that were bigger than the circumstances around her. Each note seemed to carry the weight of her life, and anyone who might have listened could feel the depth of her experience. Word began to spread through the streets. Passers-by paused, drawn to the unexpected music that seemed to rise from nowhere. Some dropped coins into a small tin she had set at the side, a gesture of appreciation and encouragement. Others simply stopped, listening in awe as the girl transformed a neglected piano into an instrument of beauty. The city seemed to hold its breath as if it understood that something extraordinary was unfolding. Days passed, and the girl continued to practice whenever she could find a piano. Her talent growing stronger with each session, she learned to adapt to the broken instruments, coaxing melodies from keys that were chipped or uneven. Her determination and resilience became her teachers, shaping her into a musician who could play not just with skill but with heart. She discovered new techniques, experimented with different styles, and allowed her emotions to guide her fingers. The music became a lifeline, a way to navigate the harsh realities of her life. Meanwhile, the billionaire could not stop thinking about her. He had tried to return to his usual routine, but the image of her music haunted him. He found himself walking the streets at odd hours, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, to see if the talent he had witnessed was real or a fleeting illusion. He watched from a distance as she played in the community center, unseen and unnoticed by most, yet shining with a brilliance that could not be ignored. Something in him stirred, a mix of admiration and humility, a feeling he had long forgotten existed. The girl began to notice the changes around her. People who had once ignored her now offered small gestures of kindness. A shopkeeper might give her a sandwich, a passerby might offer warm clothing, and children would watch her with wide eyes, captivated by the music that seemed to flow from her soul. She did not let these small comforts distract her. They were welcome, but her focus remained on the piano, on perfecting her craft, and on the hope that one day she would have the chance to play in front of an audience that could truly appreciate her talent. One afternoon, she heard a commotion outside the community center. Looking up, she saw a small crowd gathering, whispers and murmurs spreading quickly. Among them was the billionaire, his eyes fixed on her with a mixture of astonishment and respect. He had come to see her for himself, to witness the talent that had unsettled him so deeply. For the first time, he was not a figure of authority or power. He was simply a man observing someone who had nothing but extraordinary skill and determination. The girl's heart raced, but she did not falter. She recognized him, but her music did not waver. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, her melodies carrying emotion and strength. The crowd fell silent, captivated by the intensity and beauty of her performance. The billionaire watched, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine awe. He realized that the girl before him was not just talented, but remarkable in a way that could not be measured by wealth or social status. As the final notes echoed through the room, the girl paused, breathing heavily but with a sense of accomplishment. The crowd erupted in quiet applause, some moved to tears by the music. The billionaire remained silent, absorbing the impact of what he had witnessed. For the first time he felt small, humbled by someone who had so little in material terms yet so much in talent and courage. The girl stood, her gaze meeting his for a brief moment. There was no fear, no submission, only confidence and quiet pride. She had proven to herself that her gift was real, that her music could touch hearts and command attention. The encounter was a turning point, a moment where the world could no longer ignore her. As the crowd dispersed, the billionaire approached her cautiously, unsure of how to act. She remained poised, aware of his presence but not intimidated. He studied her for a moment, realizing that she had something he could never buy: authenticity, talent, and the courage to rise above circumstances that would break most people. He knew that this was just the beginning, that her journey was far from over, and that he would play a part in it, whether he wanted to or not. The girl walked away from the piano that day with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and uncertainty, but she also knew that she had the strength to face them. Her music had given her a voice, a way to communicate with the world, and a chance to change her destiny. She felt a quiet sense of pride and determination, knowing that her life was beginning to shift one note at a time. The city seemed different that morning. Sunlight fell softly across the streets, glinting off windows and sidewalks, yet the homeless girl saw it through a lens shaped by her own resolve. She walked with purpose, her steps light despite the cold ache in her stomach and the weariness in her body. Each day brought uncertainty, but today she carried a new feeling: anticipation. There was an event happening that evening, a local music showcase she had heard of through whispered conversations. It was not grand like the hotel or the ballrooms of the wealthy, but it promised an audience, a stage, and the chance to play. For weeks, she had been practicing on broken pianos, perfecting her melodies, coaxing music from instruments that seemed unwilling to sing. Every key she struck, every chord she played carried her history, her struggles, her resilience and her hope. The music had become her language, the one through which she could communicate everything she had endured and everything she dreamed to become. She carried a small bag with her, containing a few scraps of food, a notebook with scribbled notes of melodies, and a photograph of the piano she had once seen in a sunlit room, her memory of brighter days. When she arrived at the showcase, the room was modest but lively. Musicians of all ages tuned their instruments, whispered to friends, and prepared for their moments on stage. The girl felt the weight of nerves settle in her stomach, but she reminded herself of the countless hours she had spent perfecting her craft. She was ready. She would not let fear or doubt silence her. Back in the city, the billionaire was restless. He could not forget the girl, her talent, or the intensity of her performance in the abandoned community center. He had tried to focus on business meetings, investments, and deals, but the image of her fingers gliding across the piano keys haunted him. Something compelled him to attend this showcase, to see for himself whether the talent he had witnessed before was genuine or merely a fleeting moment of inspiration. He had never felt drawn to a stranger like this before, and the sensation both unnerved and intrigued him. As the girl prepared to take the stage, she noticed the unfamiliar figure in the back of the room, the billionaire quietly observing from the shadows, his presence commanding yet unobtrusive. She recognized him immediately, but she did not falter. If anything, the knowledge that someone who had doubted her now watched with interest strengthened her resolve. She had worked too hard, endured too much to let anyone's judgment sway her. The lights dimmed and a hush fell over the room. She approached the piano, the worn keys familiar beneath her fingers. The first notes were tentative, delicate, as if testing the air for acceptance. Then gradually the music grew in confidence, flowing with a richness and depth that filled the space. She played with emotion, letting every chord and scale express her journey, the hunger, the cold nights, the quiet hope that had kept her alive. The audience was captivated. Eyes widened in surprise, some leaning forward in their seats, drawn to the power and vulnerability in her performance. The girl's music transcended skill. It told a story, one that resonated deeply with everyone present. Her melodies were not just heard, they were felt, embedding themselves in the hearts of the listeners, leaving an imprint of empathy and awe. The billionaire watched, his expression unreadable at first. Then slowly admiration replaced incredulity. He had never expected a homeless girl to command a room, to move people so profoundly with nothing but her talent and determination. He felt a twinge of humility, a realization that power, wealth, and influence were no match for the raw, unfiltered force of genuine ability. This girl had something that could not be bought, taught, or manufactured. It was pure, born from experience, struggle, and an unyielding spirit. The girl's fingers danced across the keys, her music rising and falling, echoing the rhythm of her life. She played faster now, a crescendo of emotions building, each note carrying the weight of her dreams. She remembered every hardship, every moment she had felt invisible, and she poured it all into her performance. The audience, including the billionaire, felt as though they were traveling with her through every alley, every cold night, every fleeting moment of hope that had kept her alive. As the final note lingered in the air, a silence fell over the room. The audience, moved to the core, could not speak. The girl let her hands rest on the piano, her chest rising and falling with the exertion of her performance. She looked up, meeting the eyes of the billionaire. In that moment, no words were necessary. The music had spoken for her. She had communicated the truth of her existence, her strength, and her brilliance. Applause erupted, spontaneous and genuine. People rose to their feet, some with tears in their eyes, acknowledging not only the technical skill of her playing but the heart behind it. She stood, bowing slightly, her cheeks flushed with pride and relief. She had done more than play. She had told her story, and the world had listened. After the showcase, the girl retreated to a quiet corner, letting the adrenaline fade and her thoughts settle. The billionaire approached cautiously, not out of arrogance but curiosity and respect. He extended a hand, offering a small smile. For the first time, he addressed her not as a street girl or a novelty, but as an artist. "You have an extraordinary gift," he said quietly. "I underestimated you." She met his gaze steadily, her pride unshaken. "I have always had this gift. I just needed the chance to share it." He nodded, acknowledging the truth in her words. "You are remarkable. I want to help you if you will let me." The girl hesitated. Trust was not easily given. Her life had been a series of betrayals and disappointments, but there was sincerity in his tone, a genuine admiration that she could not ignore. She weighed the possibility of change, the potential for opportunity against the risk of being hurt again. Finally, she nodded, a quiet agreement to explore the path that had opened before her. Over the next few days, the billionaire kept his promise. He arranged for her to have access to a proper piano, lessons with skilled teachers, and a safe place to stay. The girl was thrust into a world she had never known, filled with both wonder and intimidation. The teachers were amazed by her natural talent, the depth of her emotion, and her ability to translate life experiences into music. Each session challenged her, honed her skills, and reinforced her belief that she was capable of greatness. Despite the comforts and support, she never forgot the streets that had shaped her. She continued to practice with the same intensity, remembering the hours of struggle that had brought her to this point. She was determined to make every note count, to honor the life she had lived and the obstacles she had overcome. Music was not just a talent. It was a lifeline, a bridge between her past and her future. The billionaire watched her progress with growing admiration. He realized that wealth could open doors, but it could not replicate the authenticity and passion that drove her. He began to reflect on his own life, understanding that success was not merely measured by power or money, but by the ability to recognize and nurture true talent. The girl's resilience and dedication challenged his worldview and inspired him to think differently about the value of human potential. As weeks turned into months, the girl's reputation grew. She performed at local events, drawing crowds who came to witness her remarkable skill. The media began to take notice, telling the story of the homeless girl who had captivated a billionaire and a city with nothing but her music. Her life was transforming, yet she remained grounded, aware of where she had come from, and committed to sharing her journey with others who might be struggling. Each performance reinforced her belief in herself and in the power of music to transcend circumstances. She played with heart, courage, and authenticity, never allowing fear or doubt to silence her. The billionaire, once her critic, became her supporter and mentor, helping her navigate the complexities of a world that had previously seemed inaccessible. Their relationship, built on respect and shared purpose, became a foundation for her continued growth. Through it all, the girl never lost sight of the moment that had sparked this journey, the encounter with a man who had doubted her, who had laughed at her circumstances, and who had unknowingly ignited her determination. She understood that her talent, resilience, and willingness to embrace opportunity had changed her life. The music that flowed from her fingers was more than sound. It was proof that even in the darkest circumstances, hope, talent, and perseverance could create miracles. Life had changed for the girl, but it was not always easy. She now had a place to sleep that was warm and safe, a piano that responded to her touch, and teachers who helped her grow. Yet despite the comforts, the world was still new and challenging. She was learning to navigate spaces she had only seen from the outside, meeting people who looked at her differently, and understanding that not everyone could see past appearances as the billionaire did. She woke one morning to sunlight streaming through a large window, illuminating the piano in the center of the room. Her hands itched to play. Music was her lifeline, and every day she pushed herself to practice more, to learn new techniques, and to perfect pieces she had only imagined before. Each note carried her story: pain, hope, determination, and dreams that were finally taking shape. Even in her new life, she never forgot where she came from. Every chord she played reminded her of the cold nights, empty stomachs, and the small acts of kindness that had sustained her. The billionaire continued to watch her progress, not just as a benefactor, but as someone genuinely inspired by her dedication. He had always lived in a world of power and control, but her presence challenged his understanding of influence. Here was someone with nothing, yet she had a force that could move hearts and minds. He found himself reflecting on his own life, questioning the true meaning of success, and realizing that talent and courage were more valuable than wealth or status. One afternoon, he invited her to attend a small gathering at his home, a chance for her to perform in a private setting with musicians and music lovers. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. She had performed for small crowds and in modest halls, but this was different. This was a room filled with people who had never seen her struggle, who had never known the life she had lived. Yet she reminded herself that her music was her voice, her truth, and she would speak it boldly. When she arrived, the atmosphere was elegant but not intimidating. Musicians tuned their instruments, glasses clinked softly, and a quiet anticipation filled the room. She approached the grand piano, her heart racing, and took a deep breath. As she began to play, the first notes filled the room, smooth and confident. She played with the same passion and emotion that had always guided her, allowing her fingers to dance freely over the keys. The audience was captivated. Some leaned forward, mesmerized by the power of her music, while others closed their eyes, letting the melodies transport them. The girl's performance was more than technical skill. It was storytelling, a way to share her journey and her emotions. Every note, every pause, every crescendo carried meaning, reflecting the depth of her experiences and the hope she carried for the future. The billionaire watched silently, a mix of pride and awe in his expression. He realized that her talent was more than a gift. It was a force that could touch lives, challenge perceptions, and inspire others. Her music was transforming not only her own life, but also the lives of those who listened. In that room, he saw the true power of perseverance, courage, and authenticity. It was a lesson he had never learned from wealth or influence alone. After the performance, people approached her with praise and admiration. They asked about her story, how she had learned to play with such emotion and skill. The girl answered simply, sharing the truth of her journey without exaggeration or embellishment. She spoke of her struggles, her hunger, her nights on the streets, and the moments of kindness that had kept her going. Her honesty resonated with everyone, reminding them that talent often comes from resilience and the human spirit. The billionaire stayed nearby, observing the interactions, feeling a sense of responsibility and respect for her growth. He understood that his support had opened doors, but it was her determination and talent that had carried her this far. He began to think about how he could help, not just her but others like her, realizing that wealth had the potential to create opportunities and change lives when used with purpose and compassion. In the weeks that followed, the girl's life continued to transform. She performed at various events, each time growing more confident and skilled. She learned to navigate the world of music with grace and humility, understanding that her journey was as much about sharing her story as it was about showcasing her talent. She became an inspiration to others, demonstrating that even in the face of adversity, it was possible to rise, achieve, and touch lives. The billionaire, once distant and controlling, found himself changing as well. He began to see the value of mentorship, the impact of encouragement, and the importance of recognizing potential in unexpected places. His interactions with her challenged his assumptions, teaching him lessons about humility, empathy, and the transformative power of talent and perseverance. He realized that true success was not measured by wealth alone, but by the ability to nurture and support the growth of others. The girl, for her part, remained grounded. She remembered the streets, the cold nights, and the moments of doubt that had defined her early life. She used these memories as fuel for her music, infusing each performance with authenticity and emotion. Her journey was far from over, but she faced the future with confidence and determination, knowing that her talent, combined with resilience, could overcome obstacles and create opportunities. One evening, after a particularly moving performance, she sat quietly at the piano, reflecting on how far she had come. The room was empty, the echoes of her music lingering in the air. She thought about the billionaire, about the people who had supported her, and about herself, the girl who had once been invisible, now capable of commanding attention and respect through her art. She felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for the opportunities she had been given, but for the strength and courage that had allowed her to seize them. As the days turned into months, her reputation grew beyond the city. Invitations to perform at larger venues arrived, journalists sought her story, and music enthusiasts marveled at the depth of her talent. Yet she never lost sight of her beginnings. She remained humble, compassionate, and determined to use her gift to inspire and uplift others. She began to teach young children who reminded her of herself, sharing not only music but the lessons of perseverance, hope, and self-belief. The billionaire continued to support her journey, but he also learned from it. He invested in community programs, music education, and opportunities for talented individuals who lacked resources. He recognized that real change required more than money. It required vision, empathy, and a commitment to fostering growth in others. Through his relationship with the girl, he discovered a new purpose, one that extended beyond personal success to the empowerment of those who had been overlooked and underestimated. In her performances, interviews, and everyday interactions, the girl carried herself with grace and humility. She understood that her story was powerful not because of the hardships she had endured alone, but because of the resilience, talent, and support that had shaped her. She had transformed her life through determination, authenticity, and the unwavering belief that her gift could change not only her own future, but the lives of those who listened. Through it all, the girl never forgot the moment that had sparked her journey, the encounter with the billionaire who had laughed at her, the challenge that had seemed impossible, and the opportunity that had arisen from it. She understood that life's twists and turns, the unexpected challenges and encounters could serve as catalysts for growth and transformation. Her music, once a private solace, had become a bridge between her past and her future, a way to connect, inspire, and leave a lasting impact. The girl's journey had taken her far beyond the streets she once called home. Her days were filled with music, practice, performances, and teaching, yet she never let herself forget the struggles that had shaped her. She carried those memories like a compass, guiding her actions, her music, and her interactions with others. Each note she played was imbued with emotion and experience, a reminder that her talent was born not only from skill but from resilience. The city had grown to know her story. People spoke of the homeless girl who had amazed a billionaire and transformed her life through music. Her performances drew crowds eager to witness her talent, each note conveying the hardships she had faced and the hope that had carried her forward. She remained humble despite the attention, focusing on the music and the message it could carry. She wanted to inspire, to show that no matter where life began, determination and talent could create change. The billionaire, who had once laughed at her plight, now stood as one of her most steadfast supporters. He marveled at how someone with nothing could command attention, touch hearts, and inspire change. His life had shifted alongside hers. He had learned lessons about humility, empathy, and the importance of nurturing talent. He had started programs to help others like her, understanding that wealth could be a tool for creating opportunity and fostering growth, not just accumulating power. One day she was invited to perform at a renowned concert hall, a place where only the most accomplished musicians played. The hall was grand, filled with golden lights, elegant architecture, and a stage that seemed to reach into the sky. She felt the familiar rush of nerves, but it was tempered by confidence. She had faced greater challenges than a large audience, and she knew that her music could speak where words might fail. Backstage, she looked at the piano, polished and perfect, a far cry from the broken instruments she had once played. She took a deep breath, letting the weight of her journey settle in her mind. She remembered the nights on the streets, the abandoned community center, the Billionaire's mocking challenge, and the first time she had played and felt the power of her own music. Those memories fueled her, reminding her of the strength she carried and the path she had walked to reach this stage. As she began to play, the hall fell silent. The music poured from her fingers, rich and emotional, carrying stories of survival, hope, and triumph. Every note resonated, touching the hearts of those who listened. The audience was spellbound, moved not only by the technical brilliance of her performance but by the authenticity and passion that radiated from her. She played with everything she had, letting the music tell her story without words, without explanation, just raw and beautiful expression. Among the audience, the billionaire watched with pride and awe. He had supported her journey, but he knew that the talent, determination, and courage were hers alone. He saw how far she had come, not just in skill but in presence and confidence. He realized that he had underestimated her at first, and in witnessing her growth, he had learned that true value and strength often come from unexpected places. The final note hung in the air, and the hall erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, and some wiping away tears. The girl bowed, humbled and grateful, feeling the impact of her journey reflected in the faces of those who had listened. She knew that this moment was a culmination of her efforts, struggles, and unwavering belief in herself. After the performance, people approached her with admiration, questions, and stories of how her music had touched them. She spoke with kindness and humility, sharing the essence of her journey without embellishment. She emphasized that talent alone was not enough. It was perseverance, hope, and the willingness to embrace opportunity that could transform lives. Her words resonated, inspiring not just admiration but a sense of possibility in everyone who listened. The billionaire joined her, offering a quiet smile. "You have changed more than your own life," he said softly. "You've shown people what's possible. You've changed me too." She nodded, understanding that her journey had indeed impacted him as much as it had inspired others. They shared a moment of mutual respect, a recognition that their paths had crossed in a way that changed both of them forever. She realized that life's challenges, when met with courage and talent, could lead to extraordinary opportunities and meaningful connections. In the days that followed, the girl continued to grow and inspire. She performed in more venues, her music touching lives far beyond the city. She began teaching children, sharing not only the skills of music but the lessons of resilience, hope, and determination. She wanted to empower others, to show that circumstances did not define potential, and that every person carried the capacity to create change in their own lives and the lives of others. The billionaire continued his support, but his role had evolved. He was no longer the one dictating or controlling. He had become a mentor, a guide, and a witness to the girl's extraordinary journey. He took lessons from her as much as she had taken guidance from him, learning about empathy, humility, and the transformative power of recognizing and nurturing talent in unexpected places. The girl's story became a symbol, shared widely through media, interviews, and word of mouth. People were inspired by her courage, her talent, and the way she had overcome adversity. She never let fame change her. She remained grounded, compassionate, and dedicated to her music and her mission to inspire others. Her journey was a testament to the power of hope, perseverance, and self-belief, showing that even in the darkest circumstances, one could rise, achieve, and make a difference. Years later, she returned to the streets where she had once lived, not to dwell in the past but to give back. She organized community programs, music workshops, and outreach events, helping children and young adults discover their talents and passions. She shared her story, encouraging them to believe in themselves, to persevere, and to embrace opportunities when they arose. The streets that had once been a place of struggle became a space of inspiration, growth, and transformation. The billionaire watched her impact with pride and admiration. He had been the one to challenge her, to underestimate her, and to witness the spark of talent that refused to be ignored. Their journey together had changed both of them, teaching lessons about humility, empathy, and the power of supporting others. He realized that true wealth was not in money alone, but in the ability to create opportunities, nurture potential, and witness lives transformed. The girl's music continued to resonate, filling concert halls, community centers, and hearts around the world. She had become more than a talented musician. She was a symbol of hope, resilience, and the extraordinary power of the human spirit. Her journey reminded everyone that no matter where life begins, talent, determination, and courage can open doors, touch lives, and create a legacy far greater than anything money could buy. In the end, the girl had transformed not only her own life but the lives of countless others. She had taken a challenge, a moment of doubt, and turned it into an opportunity for growth, inspiration, and change. Her story stood as a testament to the idea that one person, armed with talent, perseverance, and belief in themselves, could change the world in ways that could never be measured by wealth, status, or circumstance. And in the quiet moments when she played her music alone, she remembered the journey, the struggles, and the triumphs, knowing that she had created a life of meaning, purpose, and extraordinary beauty.